Science tells us that we are the product of an explosion out of nothing that formed our universe over billions of years and random chance.
In the beginning, a long time ago and far, far away, there was nothing, which manifested a singularity, which exploded, and over millions and billions of years produced not only our vast material universe, but also life in the entire spectrum of the non-material or spiritual realm. So goes the Big Bang Theory, encapsulated in one long sentence. Let me reply with, first of all, there is no such thing as nothing, never was and never could be, because you cannot get something from nothing. Nothing nothings, as Heidegger said, about nothingness not being able to do anything. Nothingness is just and only a conceptual marker, like zero, used only for contrast and mental reference. To posit otherwise is reification, making something unreal into something real, a violation of rationality, logic, and reason, a breach of intellectual responsibility. Secondly, since we are all familiar with the concept of nothing, the average person should be able to realize that you cannot start creation with it. But a material singularity is an unknown, a more effective yet an even worse reification, and is nothing short of cosmological chicanery. From my learning and perspective, the premier astronomer to this point in time was Halton Arp, who earned his PhD from Caltech. For 29 years, he did his stellar work at Palomar Observatory, where he and his associated astronomers, Jeffrey and Margaret Burbidge and others, cataloged enough examples of highly redshifted quasars that were clearly in front of lower redshifted galaxies in the background. Of course, this is an unequivocal violation of expanding universe theory. Being a respected and highly qualified astronomer in the 1970s, he went to the astronomical community, expecting them to see and address the ARP group's findings. They didn't want to hear it, for reasons that should be obvious. Too drastic violation of established theory, too much controversy, too much damage to their standing and careers. ARP felt this time it would be different, if he was patient and careful enough to compile the group's findings in a composite and convincing way. Thus, he authored and published the book Quasars, Redshifts, and Controversies, 1987, portraying and explaining why they should listen. No deal. Still no response except a growing distancing and alienation. Welcome to the cruel dystopian world, Dr. Arp. After about 10 patient years, he got exercised and authored another book with a double entendre title, Seeing Red, June 1997. Seeing Red was an obvious reflection of not only redshift, but of how he felt.
Evolution's most famous proponent not only had affiliations with some of the secret societies we will cover in future episodes, but admitted that the human eye caused major problems with his theory in stating, "To suppose that the eye, with all its inimitable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree." Malcolm Muggeridge further stated that I myself am convinced that the theory of evolution, especially to the extent to which it has been applied, will be one of the greatest jokes in the history books of the future. Evolution is founded upon many assumptions with very little physical evidence weighing in its favor. There should be millions of skeletal remains of transitional human and intermediate species bridging the gaps between aquatic and land life. Instead, we are presented with a few scant examples of what have been claimed to be transitional humans. Most of these examples have been proven forgeries, including the Piltdown Man, Java Man, Nebraska Man, and Peking Man. There are also many questions around the evidence presented for Neanderthal Man and Lucy. Science has done a poor job of explaining where we live and how we got here, yet most are content to accept its theories and their downstream implications without question. His story tells us that in 1796, during an excavation of gypsum in a quarry near the Dutch town of Maastricht, remains of a giant marine lizard called a Mosasaurus were found and turned over to Napoleon's army. This allowed budding naturalist and zoologist Georges Cuvier to ultimately conclude that species extinction was a reality and pave the way for what would be known as paleontology. In a theme that would become a trend in that field of study, Georges was said to have the ability to use even a few fragments of bones to reconstruct the complete anatomy of a previously unknown species with uncanny accuracy. Not long after this discovery was the first dinosaur fossil purported to have been identified in 1815 and the term Dinosauria coined in 1841 by Royal Society member and superintendent of the British Museum of Natural History, Sir Richard Owen. Roughly 30 years later, Othaniel C. Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope would be credited with discovering a combined 136 new dinosaurs during the quote-unquote Bone Wars, lasting from 1877 to 1892.
Edward Cope was brilliant and ambitious. He wanted fame and fossils. His rival, O.C. Marsh, had the money to pay for them. Driven by jealousy and greed, their methods were often less than subtle. Before their rivalry began, only 9 dinosaur species had been discovered in all of North America. But in less than 20 years, their feud had added another 130 species to the list. It was a phenomenal achievement.
O.C. Marsh was an ardent evolutionist and nephew of millionaire George Peabody. Edward Drinker Cope came from the prestigious Quaker family and went on to author 1,400 scientific papers based on his discoveries. Curiously, dinosaurs had never been mentioned in history or by Native Americans prior to this flurry of activity. What most people don't realize about the discovery of dinosaur fossils is that individual pieces collected in different locations and at different times can and have been attributed to a single specimen being identified. Furthermore, most of the pieces that go into creating the images of dinosaurs shown to the public look like chunks of rock. Let me show you an example of how this works. Number YPM VP 1920 is the official numerical designation for the fragments discovered by O.C. Marsh in the 1800s and attributed to Diplodocus longus. Someone's vivid imagination sketches a cartoon from such a rock collection, then replica bones are created for display at museums. The unsuspecting public is also unaware that many manufacturers stand ready to fulfill orders for imitation dinosaur bones of any shape and size. Many people who have accepted the secular view of humanity's origin story do not realize that the Big Bang Theory, dinosaurs, and evolution are a package deal. You cannot realistically believe in any one of these theories without the others to support it. It should come as no small surprise that the idea of evolution and dinosaurs came out in roughly the same time frame, followed shortly by the Big Bang in the 1920s. If any one of these theories can be shown to involve fraud or deliberate deception, they all quickly unravel. Ernst Haeckel's embryo drawings are one example of blatant forgery which he admitted to during an academic trial. His motivation was the same as the theory of evolution, dinosaurs, and heliocentricity, to deny the existence of God. However, the evidences of a creator are too numerous to count, which cannot be said of the aforementioned unholy trinity. I can say without the shadow of a doubt that you were created and have a special purpose in this life.